everybody, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am doing a video for you guys today featuring our new Kite bead. And if you haven't used it yet, it is 9 by 5 millimeters. It looks kind of like a diamond duo with an exaggerated end, or a mini silky with that exaggerated end. And I'm going to be playing with the shape going along kind of with that design, making what I'm calling the Pixelated Bracelet. So you can see there's no real pattern to this bracelet. It's going to be a combination of 3 colors as you work with it, along with some 15-0s. If you need any of the materials to do this Pixelated Bracelet, you can go down to below the video where there is the date stamp that says the date that the video was produced. If you hit that and the little show more or down arrow button, that'll give you links to the different products. That way you can purchase from me online. In addition to that, there's a little eye in the top right hand corner if you move your mouse over there, and that's information from us, the video creator, which includes the links to the different materials as well. So this Pixelated Bracelet is based on peyote stitch, except we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. We're going to be going lengthwise rather than kind of widthwise in order to get that peyote base, basically, and that peyote design. So rather than going this way and doing peyote back and forth, we're going to be going the opposite way and doing kind of lengthwise and then coming back with some peyote stitch. Again, the kite beads, which we're going to be using in 3 different colors. Here I have in that purple iris gold, and then the jade color that I'll be working with. I'm going to mix it up and do this Pixelated Bracelet that doesn't have a pattern per se with 3 colors. We're using the opaque red, the jet bronze, and the Aztec gold colors in this bracelet. Some 15-0s are going to go down the sides of the Kite peyote bracelet here, and the Pixelated Bracelet will just have 3 15s on the little end, so that way we don't have an empty hole sticking out. You can also forego them and have the empty hole sticking out. That's kind of up to you as you create and as you work on the design. For the 15-0 that I'll be using with you guys, I have the black bronze color, which is a Miyuki 15-0 seed bead. Here in the design, I have the 15-0 in Miyuki champagne color, the DC galvanized champagne, if you're looking to kind of follow along with this one or make one with us. The whole bracelet is going to be held together with some wildfire beading thread. I'm using the gray color in 0.006 here, which is going to be used in conjunction with a size 10 beading needle. You can use an 11, 12, 13, anything kind of smaller than a 10 will work, but a size 10 is what you're going to want to use. A lot of times with these bigger beads, I like to use a size 10, and a size 10 will fit through the 15-0s fine because it's just going through one side size. And I like to use the size 10 because it's a bigger needle, and the beads tend to be a little bit heavier, obviously, than seed beads because they are 9mm long. So that's why I use that size 10 needle. We're going to be starting out with about 5 feet of our beading thread, and depending on the length of your wrist, you may have to add a little bit. And we're going to be using that size 10 needle on the end of that 5 feet of thread. At the very end, we'll go ahead and put on, as we kind of work back and forth, our gold-plated 2-strand clasp here, and that's going to go at the end of the bracelet here, right there, and have the whole thing be almost like a cuff design. So you can see the bracelet in relationship to the clasp. There are a number of different clasps that you can use to do this long pixelated bracelet. So without further ado, we're going to get ready. I'm going to take my thread zap or my thread burner, burn off my 5 feet of thread, take a needle nose pliers or a wide tweezers like this, kind of pinch down the end of the thread, which is going to flare it out a little bit and make it easier to thread your needle. At the very end of the needle, we're going to go ahead, or the end of the thread rather, I'm going to take a bead that's not part of the design, like an 11-0 seed bead. Here is a red one. And I'll take that and I'll put that on the end of the thread to work as a stop bead. So go ahead and get that 5 feet of beading thread, pour out your kite beads. Your 15-0s can stay in the tube for now. Pour out your little piles of kite beads and we will get ready to get started on this Pixelated Bracelet. So now that I have my 5 feet of thread with that stop bead on the base, and if you're unfamiliar with a stop bead, it's just a bead that goes through 2 times through the end of the thread. And I have about 4 inches of thread at the end here, just enough if I need to tie on some extra I can. However, I don't need to use a ton of thread, or leave a ton of thread rather, because as we come down to the base of the bracelet, that's when we'll be adding the clasp. So we'll kind of be going and adding it as we come up and back into the bracelet. The very beginning of the bracelet is a very simple design. We're going to be grabbing 3 beads at a time, going through the shorter side of the kite bead. The nice thing with the kite bead is it's not only one-sided, or I'm sorry, it doesn't have a side. Both sides match, so you don't have to worry about which direction you're picking it up in. I'm going to add 3 beads of each color and then start over with my pattern. So I have 3 beads that I'm adding, again through the short side of the kite, and I'm literally just adding them right down the line here, right in the middle, through that middle section. The cool thing about the Pixelated Bracelet is it's an organized design, but it looks like it is pixelated and it looks like it doesn't really have a pattern. But the cool thing is that it does semi have a pattern. So what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning here. So I have my 3 gold, 3 bronze, 3 red. I'm going to go back to the beginning and do one more of that same pattern. So 3 gold, 3 bronze, and 3 red. From there then, after doing the same pattern twice as far as gold, bronze, red, I'm going to go backwards now and do a bronze, and then a gold set. And when I say bronze and then a gold, I'm doing sets of 3 always. What that's going to do is kind of switch up the pattern a little bit so it's not so predictable. This is a good time too if you see any imperfections like this one here that kind of missed its top. I'm going to take those last 3 off and go backtrack and just kind of throw that one off to the side. It makes you appreciate the patterns when you watch the videos. We have videos on the Czech glass production. If you check out those videos on the Czech glass production, it makes you appreciate a little bit more. When they have imperfections, you say, it's okay. So I have my design on here that I have 3 gold, bronze, red. That's kind of the pattern that we're working with. And then I have again gold, bronze, red. Then I reversed it and I went backwards to the bronze and then the gold. And now I'm going to pick up the red and do that reverse pattern again. So bronze, and then gold. I'm doing enough of my kite beads here for the whole length of the bracelet. So if you have a 7-inch wrist, you're going to do right about 7 inches of beads, because then by the time you add your bar clasp on or your tube clasp here, it'll make it about 7 1/4, which will make it fit comfortably on your wrist. So I have all of my beads on here. And I'm going to do my pattern again. So this time I'm reversing once again, going back to my bronze here. And it doesn't need to have any rhyme or reason really. I'm just going over exactly why, or exactly the pattern that I'm going over. So I have my bronze here because I have a gold. So I'm doing bronze, and then I'm going to grab a red here. Red grouping. So I always just want to make sure that the groupings kind of happen in color order, not necessarily the exact order, but happening in a color. You can see naturally the beads are kind of falling one direction versus the other because of the way that they're cut. We're going to make sure that they're all going in the same direction as we do the cut. So here I'm going to repeat the gold, and I'm going to make mine about 6 3/4 inches. So by the time I put on that bar clasp, I get an extra 1/4 of an inch out of it. After the gold, I will go ahead and repeat the red because I don't have any reds that are right after one another. Again, just making sure that I'm going through that bigger end there. After my red grouping here, I will be done with my base strand. This bracelet is not going to shrink up at all because it's going to lay flat and stay flat. From here, you just want to put it on your wrist, kind of pinching the end. I know it's hard to see. And you want it so almost the beads touch. By the time you add the clasp in, you'll have that extra little space that you need for your wrist. Some people like bracelets a little bit bigger, and that's kind of up to you. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of my color groupings, just to let you know. From here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do basically peyote stitch that we're going to be adding another section of our beads. This time, instead of picking up the beads from the big end, we're going to pick them up from our longer, narrow end. Here at the very end, what I want you to do to get from one bead to the other is I'm going to go back through and kind of switch these beads so I know that they're all facing in the correct direction, at least the first couple here. So there at the end, I know I'm good up to here. And I'm going to add my first bead, which is going to go through in the lengthwise. To do so, you're going to dump out some of your 15-0s now that you're done with that long base strand. And we're going to dump out a little pile of those to work with. The 15-0s right now are just going to act as a connector to get from one bead to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and put on 5 15-0s, and let those drop down next to the kite beads. From there, I want you to pick up your kite bead through the long end. How I'm going to make this varied is I'm going to take turns with the beads that I pick up. So I'm going to pick up here a gold bead, and I'm going to going through and picking up a gold bead through the skinny end of the kite. I'm going to go through the skinny end of the next kite in line to go at the base. So you can see that kind of just fits right in there. From here, I'm going to pick up another color. So I'm going to pick up my bronze and get one of the bronze beads in, going through the skinny part and going through the top. From here, I need a red bead because that's going to be my pattern. So the pattern on the end is always going to be the same. That's how you get it kind of in a organized / fashion. If you want to, you can switch it up like I said, but my pattern is going to be gold, bronze, red, gold, bronze, red. And that's how I'm going to keep it kind of that it's at random. So I have the gold and the bronze. I'm going to pick up a red kite bead through the skinny end and go through the next kite bead that's facing down. So you can see you need to make sure that these beads here are in line. That's why I said I lined up to the red. Next, I'm going back to gold, picking up through the skinny end and sewing through. So sometimes the gold will touch and you'll have it kind of be a nice little collection here. I'm not worried that the thread is showing a lot because I have that stop bead on the end that I can go back and I can add or take away thread if I need to. Picking up the next kite bead in my pattern, I'm going to add that in. If you want to, like I said, you can switch up the pattern. You can grab another one of the bronze so it looks even more pixelated. That's up to you. I'm going to grab my next gold bead and go through and grab a red bead and sew through. So you need to make sure that center line is sitting correctly as you work and you add this next row of beads. Again, I know that my center line is good up until I get to that red, and now I can go through and kind of switch them back around. So you're making sure that every other bead on the base line here is facing the opposite direction. That's just going to make it easier as you're adding your beads and kind of getting ready for the second row of this peyote stitch almost, that you have it lined up. So there's my bronze bead and I'm back to gold. And again, like I said, I'm not making it super tight because I have that stop bead on so I can tighten up the end. I just want to keep it a little bit tight so that way it makes my life a little bit easier as I'm adding these beads, that it's not flipping the middle line. So I'm just going to continue down the row then in that same pattern of that gold, bronze, red, going the whole way down to the very end to where my stop bead is. So I'm at the very end here and I'm getting ready to add in my last of my kite beads. So I'm going to go ahead and add the last of the kite beads in, and I'm going to repeat what I did on that starter side. And you can see kind of that organized design going on here, that I have the color pattern. And here at the end, I'm going to add my 5 of my seed beads. So I have my 5 seed beads there. And I'm going to jump over to that second kite bead. That's going to be right next to the stop bead. From here, I'm going to go through this kite and kind of circle back around so I can get back to the top hole over here of that row of the kite beads. So I'm going to go through here, going through that center row, coming out the second bead of the center row. I'm going to go back through that bead and back through the bead that I just put on. It's going to expose a little bit of thread on the outer line or the outer edge of that kite bead back there, but you can see it's already disappearing, that nice gray color in it. From there, I'm going to take my seed beads, go through them again. So I added those 5 seed beads. I kind of circled around right here to come back to those 5 seed beads. And then I'm going to add 5 more seed beads and jump from that bottom hole of the first bead that we put on our project to the top hole of the first bead. And you can see that's just going to decorate that outer edge with beads. Once we go in and actually put in our clasp, those beads will work as our joining factor to join our bar clasp here, or our tube clasp rather. From here, we get to run another line of our beads. So we're going to run a whole nother line of our seed beads here, or of our kite beads rather. And for this line, I'm just going to pick up a random bead and make that my first bead. And same thing, so I have a red bead here that I'm picking up through the skinny end of the kite bead. And if you want to, I'm going to kind of switch it. And at this point, I can also hold my beads here, which I like to hold my beads as I work with them rather than work on the bead mat. And I have my kite bead that goes on. Give a nice little pull. Red is going to be first. Then I'll go with gold. Sew through. So you're repeating the actions that you just did previously. And then bronze will be next. Red goes next. Then gold, then bronze. You can see if you need to, you can just kind of pull that little end there and that'll tighten it up. So I'm going through here with that kind of organized design. Really, it's just a simple pattern down the middle of groups of 3. And then here on the end, every other bead or every third bead, you repeat the first color. And that has that nice kind of look then of that organized, pixelated design. So go ahead and continue down the rest of the project, adding in your kite beads in that pattern, and then we'll get ready to add our final seed beads along the edge and add in our clasp. So from here, as we reach the end, we get to actually put on our clasp as we add our seed beads on the end to catch. Like I said, if you want to, you can just forego the seed beads, but you're going to have that open end of the kite beads. That being said, also, if you're not crazy into the pixelated kind of random design, you can do one color down the middle and then another color on the ends. That's kind of up to you if you do want to do multiple differences in colors. You could also do lines in colors. For that, you would do every 2 beads down the middle in a different color. So you could do zigzags too. So that's kind of up to you depending on which pattern you want to do. From here, I'm at the outer edge and I'm going to add my seed bead clasp. I'm going to add my grouping of 5 beads going from one hole of the kite to the other, just like we did on the previous end. So I have my 5 beads and I'm going to sew through the 5 beads that are already there. When I come out these original 5 beads that are already there, I'm going to go back to that starter row and just kind of pull the stop bead a little bit. From here, I'm going to add 2 seed beads. Sew through the clasp, add 2 more seed beads, and then sew back through that row of 5. Coming out after those 5. Making sure that my thread is not around my clasp. That's just making a little loop for your clasp to sit inside of. If you want, you can also use a wire guard and have your clasp sit in a wire guard. So that's kind of up to you. So you can see how it just kind of sits and hangs out there rather. From here, coming out that group of 5 seed beads, I'm going to add 2 more 15s. Sew up through the other side of the clasp add 2 more 15s, and sew down through the second set of 5 seed beads. Once I sew down through that second set of 5, I am on the outer edge here of the kite beads. And again, making sure the thread loves to go around the bar clasp, so just make sure that you're not around the bar clasp. Give a nice tight pull and the seed beads will kind of just shrink up there inside the clasp. From here, I'm going to add 5 more beads to get from the second hole of the middle kite bead to the outer kite bead. 5 seed beads go on, and I'm not worrying really about reinforcing that clasp because I still have to come back down the project and I'll reinforce at that point. I'm going to go through the outer edge then, or that outer hole of that last kite bead, and from there it becomes very simple. You're going to go down your line of your kite beads here, catching the outer hole, adding in 3 15s, and through the empty hole of the next kite bead. 3 15s, through the empty hole. If you want to, you could use Miyuki seed beads as far as drops go. You could use drops kind of in the middle there. That's up to you if you want to get a little bit of a different design. I'm just going with the simple 15s. If you want to stay with that kind of pixelation, you can also use different colors of 15-ohs. If you want to do the striping, like I said, by repeating 2 kite beads in a row at the very beginning, you could switch up the colors as well to continue with that row design. But I'm just doing the 15s, filling in between the kite beads the whole way down to the base of the project. We'll add in our other side of our clasp down there, and we'll come back up the top then. So I'm here at the end of the bracelet, and as I work with the end of the bracelet, I want to make sure that my clasp is facing the correct direction. So I don't want it facing that way on the other end, I want it facing up. That way when I go to put it together, it is correct. So just that kind of side note, make sure your clasp on the second side is facing up if the other one is facing down. From here on the end, I'm going to repeat just like I did on the other side, adding in 5 seed beads to get from the outer hole here to the upper set of seed beads. Push that stop bead just kind of out of the way. I'm going to go through the 5 seed beads that I have here at the end, just like I did on the other side, and I'm coming out of those 5 seed beads. So my thread is coming out of basically 10 beads, the 5 that I just put on and the 5 that were already there. From there, I'm going to add my 4 seed beads, and I'm going to go through the bottom loop of my clasp. From there, sew up through the 5 seed beads that sit along the top of the kite. And after you come out of those 5 seed beads, we're going to add 4 more beads and then go through the second loop of the clasp. So sewing through those, making sure that your loops are sitting in the correct spot. 4 more seed beads go on through the loop, and then back through that grouping of 5 seed beads. What that's going to do is actually bring you out near the stop bead. On this side, we're not coming back down to this side again, so we're going to reinforce the clasp now. So you just want to make sure at this point, before you start reinforcing and tying off thread, that your clasp and your bracelet is actually going to fit you. Once you know that it is, I'm going to take my stop bead off. And once you take your stop bead off too, you are going to make sure here that it fits, because we're about to kind of make it permanent. So sometimes the stop beads, if you're using a seed bead, will pull out nice and easy. If you're using a delica, sometimes not so much, and you have to pull the actual threads off. From here, I'm going to give a nice tight pull on both the thread that I'm working on as well as the center thread. Take both thread ends here and knot the thread together. So I'm knotting the starter thread with the thread that I'm currently using. From there, I'm going to take my thread burner and I'm going to burn down the thread that was the starter thread. From here, I'm going to go back through the clasp that I added, those 4 seed beads, up through it, through the clasp, down the other side, back through the 5 seed beads along the base here. If you need to stick on a size 12 needle, you can. It might get a little bit stiff going through these 15s. A lot of times at the bar clasp, if I'm adding them, I'll use 11-0s, but I don't want you guys to have out one more thing. I'm just going to reinforce this second loop, going through again, because you want to make sure that you have at least 2 strands of thread through the clasp. Because the clasp is always where you're going to have the most tension on your bracelet. Flipping it over so you guys can see a little bit better. Coming out of the clasps now, I will get ready to add 5 more seed beads. Going then from the clasp, which is at the bottom hole of this kite bead, to the top hole of that kite bead. And there's another grouping of those 5 beads. So the beads are going to line the whole entire end of the project at that very end. From here, you just simply come down the base of the bracelet here, just like we did at the top, adding in our 3 seed beads at a time between each one of our kite beads. So go ahead and add your 3 seed beads and we'll come down to the opposite end. When you're out the final end here of the bracelet, what you want to do is basically repeat the first starting side. I'm at the last kite here, and I'm going to add my 5 seed beads. And I'm going to go up through the 4 beads that are holding on the clasp. Reinforcing then that clasp and adding that second strand in right there. Again, making sure that you're not going around the clasp and not getting caught on the clasp. From here, I'm going to sew back through 5 more seed beads towards the middle of the bracelet. Give a nice tight pull to tighten that up. Come out those 5 beads. Go through the 4 beads that are holding on the clasp there on the opposite side. Coming out then that front side. I'm going to go through one more time, or one more bead, and then come out on the end. Giving a nice tight pulls, that'll kind of tighten up that whole thing. From there, if you want to go through one more time, you can. I'm just going to sew back through the project a little bit to end my thread. Going back down my 15s here on the side, right along that outer edge. Going through one of the kite beads. I'm going to come back through a kite bead so that I'm in one of the center portions of my bracelet. I'm going to sew underneath the bridge thread, which is the thread between them. Make a loop. Sew through that loop once with your needle and twice with your needle. It's a little bit hard to see, I know, but that's going to make a nice secure knot there. And I want to pull that knot tight, get that in there. From there, I'm going to go through the next kite bead, bring my thread out. Same thing, grab one of your bridge threads there. Go through and tie off the end of the bridge thread. Give a nice tight pull. If you want, you can grab some super new glue and glue the knot that you just created. Because I have 2 knots in there, I'm going to get ready and actually take my thread burner, burn through the end of that thread, and then flatten it out nice and flush with the project. Go back to the starter end then as well, and that thread that I burned down, I'm going to burn down a little bit further, and then create that nice blunt end with a thread burner. With the gray thread, you really don't see it at all in this fun pixelated bracelet. I'm excited to play with the kites more and kind of see what I can do with them. Having fun, like I said, you can create patterns if you don't want it to be kind of that pixelated random pattern. You can do stripes. To do so, you would just do every 2 beads in the center a different color. And then as you get along the outer edge, you'll switch colors every single time. If you want to, you can also do the 3 beads in the center a different color, and then your beads on the kites on the top of the row and the bottom of the row a different color. So there's a bunch of different patterns that you can do. It's basic peyote is really what it is with a multi-hole bead, but so the bracelet stays nice and flat, I like to start with the center rather than starting with an edge. As you design, if you need any further assistance, you can check out the other YouTube videos that we have. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, which will give you regular updates when we get new beads in, like the kite beads, as well as when we create new patterns, like this fun bracelet here. And you can also stay connected with us by visiting us on Facebook at potomacbeads.com, and also joining our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Ask to become a member there and show us what you make, how we inspire you. We'd love to see your designs. That's the best part of it, is seeing what you guys do with the beads that we ship out to you guys and that we get into your hands. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have fun playing around with the kites and creating, if you get a chance, this fun pixelated bracelet.